Most developers who join a new project spend their first 2 weeks doing one thing: reading code they didn't write, trying to figure out how it all connects. Services, databases, APIs, background jobs. It's reverse engineering, and it's slow, and it's mostly a waste of time. DeepRepo just made it optional. You paste a GitHub URL. That's it. Within seconds, DeepRepo returns a full architecture diagram, services mapped, dependencies drawn, data flows connected. No setup. No config files. No reading through folders manually. I tested it on a mid-sized open-source project, a production-grade web app with a React front-end, a Node API layer, a PostgreSQL database, and a Redis cache. The diagram it generated was accurate. It correctly identified the separation between the front-end and back-end, picked up the database connection layer, and even flagged the caching logic as a distinct component. That would have taken me a solid 30 minutes to map manually. The way it works is roughly this: DeepRepo sends the repo structure and key files through an AI model that reads file names, imports, configuration files, and dependency declarations to infer the architecture. It's not executing the code. It's reading it the way a senior engineer would on day one. But here's the thing: it's not magic, and the limitations matter. DeepRepo reads what's visible in the repo. If your architecture is partially defined by runtime configuration, environment variables, or infrastructure that lives outside the repo, like Terraform files in a separate private repo or cloud-specific settings in a dashboard, it won't know about those. The diagram will be incomplete, not wrong exactly, but partial. It also struggles with monorepos. Large, multi-service repositories with deeply nested folder structures and shared libraries can confuse the inference layer. I tested it on a monorepo with 6 internal packages, and the diagram collapsed several services into one node incorrectly. Not useless, but not trustworthy without manual review. And right now, the output is static. You get a diagram. You can't click a node and jump to the relevant file. You can't update the diagram as the codebase changes without rerunning the tool. For a living codebase that's being actively developed, that's a friction point. What surprised me was how close it got on repos it had no prior knowledge of. The accuracy on well-structured, modern repos was genuinely high. The problem is that not all repos are well-structured. So where does this go from here? The realistic near-term improvements are integration with CI/CD pipelines. Imagine a diagram that regenerates automatically on every pull request merge. That alone would turn this from a one-time tool into infrastructure. There's also a natural path toward diff-based diagrams. Show me what changed architecturally between this version and the last one. That would be genuinely powerful for code review. Another realistic use case is onboarding documentation. Right now, most engineering teams have either outdated architecture docs or none at all. A tool that auto-generates a current diagram from the actual codebase every week is more valuable than a Confluence page nobody updates. If DeepRepo gets deployed as a self-hosted option, which some teams will need for private repos, hosting it on something like DigitalOcean with a straightforward droplet setup would make that accessible even for smaller teams without a dedicated DevOps function. Why does this tool exist? Because architecture documentation is one of those things every engineering team knows they should do and almost none of them do well. Writing and maintaining diagrams by hand is low priority until it causes a real problem, an outage, a new hire who takes 3 weeks to become productive, a refactor that breaks something nobody knew was connected. DeepRepo exists because the people who build software are not the same people who document it, and sometimes they're not even the same people who understand it anymore. The codebase outlives the people who wrote it. An AI that can read it cold and produce something useful immediately, that's solving a real problem. Is it ready to replace your architecture review process? No. Is it good enough to be the first thing you run on any unfamiliar repo? Absolutely yes. If you're working with legacy codebases specifically, that's where the next episode goes: tools that don't just diagram old code, but help you actually refactor it safely. Subscribe so you don't miss it.